No, your grandfather, he never lived here. He was a Navy man, and he was a baker. And he just got the grudge of going back into the Navy when we were living in Maynard. I was 3 years old, and my sister was 3 months old when he left for the Navy. And so my mother and we kids, we came here to live with Grandpa. And so my mother inquired about it to the government, and they didn't know where he was. He probably had a name changed. And so then we came here to live, and my mother was a nurse. She worked on the Baldwinville Hospital and brought us up here. And so it was 1923 when my mother died, and my father came from Pittsburgh to the funeral. And I never seen him before that I can remember. But we brought up with Grandpa, and Grandpa was more a father to me, and I was more of a son to him when he lost his son in France in the First World War. And so I've been more like a son to him instead of a grandson. Well, I have to say that there was in 1920s when I told my grandfather that you got 24 cows, most of the cows in Hubbardston, or Pitcherville, and you're only getting 4 cents a quart for milk. And I'm looking forward of living in this world. So I told my grandfather that I got a job, Metropolitan Waterworks in the tunnels in Rutland.
When I was young and in my prime, I left my home in Hubbardston. Now all I do is sit and pine for all the folks I left behind. Got them Wachusett Ridge blues, and I'll stand right here and I'll say, my grip is packed to travel, and I'm scratching gravel on the mountain ridge far away. Gonna stand right here by my pond, gonna do right here by my mom. Gonna hang around the cabin door, no work or worry anymore. Got them Wachusett Ridge blues, and I'll stand right here and I'll say, my grip is packed to travel, and I'm scratching gravel in the Blue Ridge Mountains far away. I see the window with the light, I see 2 heads snowy white, I hear them both recite, with my one boy gone on tonight. Got them Wachusett blues, and I'll stand right here and I'll say, every day I'm counting till I climb that mountain on that Wachusett Ridge far away.
I was a wrestler a couple of years, and then when I got married with Dot Runholm, she didn't like wrestling, so I quit that. And I worked on the Highcrest farm in Sterling, where I met Dot. And then we took over the Grandpa's farm here. I've been a farmer, I've been a half-assed greenhouse operator, and I mean, I've enjoyed myself. I brought up 5 children. Now I have 9 grandchildren, and I think 8 great-grandchildren. I told Dot that we ain't going to live in Princeton here. When Ekblad, the real estate man, that was a good friend of the family, Mary put the farm for sale for him, and he could have sold it that day or any day, but he wanted to find where I am, to keep it in the family. So finally he found me in Princeton, and he told me that I'd like to have you buy the farm. I said, yeah, I put $200 down for Mary, but then she backed out, and but I'll buy the farm. But I think I lived on that farm, and I worked for my grandfather a good many years, where I could have done something for myself. But I run the dairy farm for him, just to keep him happy. That I'd like to have a praiser to praise the price of the farm, and I'll pay half of that praise for Mary, and the other half is mine. And he said, well, that's square enough. So he got the praiser, and come to me $6,500 that I have to pay on the farm. That's my share of the farm. That's what I paid her. Well, then she lived like a millionaire till the money was gone. Then she goes to a lawyer and says that my nephew robbed me. She had a place in Gardner. Then she come over in Pitcherville for the summer. You know, it's an old filling station from Princeton that she bought, and they brought it up on this land that I gave her. I gave that land for her, besides her share of the farm, because there's no water there for cattle, only blueberries up there. So she wasn't satisfied anyway. The place burnt down by jealous Finn, Hast. Dick Lyon's first wife lives on the farm now that Hast used to live on. They came here and burnt the place down for jealousy, because my grandfather was a sawmill operator and dairy farmer, and it was 1915 when this house was built again, and farm, and of course I've added buildings and remodeled it after I took it over from my aunt, and now I'm here all alone. But I still enjoy my country life.
And we had a big garden out here years ago, and you know, the whole couple acres, and we used to have to weed it an hour every day. The planes would fly over here because the Garden Airport was right back here, and this was kind of the landing padding for the airport, and we used to stand out there, wave our arms, and the plane would kind of rock as they go over that they saw us.
And of course, on the meat side of things, we did raise some pigs and had beef, but my dad was also the fence minder for the town. And in other words, here's a responsibility to, if someone's cows get out, whatever, make sure that these people repair their fence. He was also the one who was responsible for stray animals, you know, dog catcher essentially, and also responsible for roadkill. And I understand, my mom confessed years later that a lot of the stuff we grew up with was not pork, was not beef, but it was roadkill. Porcupine, raccoon. I don't know if it was any bear, but there was a lot of different meats that we had. So that's why some of it seemed a little game.
And when I was young, back in the 50s, Toivo Maddow next door here, he had a multi-level chicken barn. And Kane across the street, he had 2 barns full of chickens. In the summertime, he had his fields all fenced off with these little coops there, and all the chickens were outside. And everybody in the village here probably had a milking cow and chickens and pigs. And then there was all these small farms in Hubbardston there. The milkman would come every night and collect everybody's milk for mass distribution. And then government regulations where you had to get electric gutter cleaning units and bulk tanks, and like that, where you couldn't touch the milk or carry it. It had to go right from the cow into the tanks. And that equipment was very expensive.
Pasteurization equipment, yeah.
And having 23 cows in a barn and getting 6 cents a quart.
Didn't pay, yeah.
All the farms.
So I guess at that time we just got it down to, I guess, 8 or 6 or 4 cows, and then, you know, raised a little beef on the side too.
And then being on a farm, we really never had much of a vacation because you always had to be here for the cows. And when my dad sold the milking cows, we all went to Cape Cod for a week. And when we came back, my dad went into beef cows, black Angus. He raised that for a while, and finally he went into just vegetables and plants.
25 head. That's the most we had here. All the neighbors had 6 to 8 and 10, but we had 25 because my grandfather was a very active farmer, and I was always interested in farming. I don't know why. And I had up to 35 cows when I took over the farm, but it got so that couldn't even make a living anymore at 35 cows. So they wanted tank. They're going to pick my milk with a tanker. So I thought to myself, this is the day when I'm going to put the cards on the table and give up dairy farming. And of course, I've always been an ambitious man. I started a greenhouse business. And you always have to put a little extra in advertising to draw the people. And for the people, I was very satisfied with my plants. And today, as I live alone, I gave up greenhouse business. They still come here and ask if I got any tomato plants because I was a tomato king in Hubbardston once.
I was 6 years old when my aunt in Templeton gave me a book on the early inventors. And one was a Greek scientist who built the first steam engine. It was a ball that had steam jets on it, and they had to have a fire under this thing to heat the water. Well, I built this thing behind the shed here, and I was using newspaper to get the fire going. And I ran the house to get more newspaper and come back out, the cornfield's on fire. So I'm running back and forth from the barn with buckets of water. Larry comes home from school, and he's helping me put the fire out. We got it out. And we pulled all my dad put grass and hay around the plants to mulch it. And we pulled all this burnt hay and the burnt stalks, and we ditched them under the barn. We got some fresh hay and we put it around the plants. So to this day, my dad thinks that porcupines had a hell of a time eating his crop.
Where we're sitting right now was oftentimes corn. I think we did have some veggies running this side, but most of it was on the flat right up there. And then up in the back was potatoes over there. Remember, my folks started organic gardening back in the 60s. And my mom got this thing called Organic Gardening, this magazine, this periodical, and so they experimented with a lot of this stuff. And quite often we just lay the potatoes down, just cover them with a little dirt, and then cover them over with hay, because we had an abundance of hay. And so then you had this kind of like all this straw laid out, and then eventually you see the potato plants popping through. No bugs on them. And so when it was time to harvest the potatoes, all you had to do if you just want a meal was to go over and lift the hay over and just brush the dirt away, and there was potatoes. Organic potatoes, no pesticides, nothing.